The low, sputtering growl of the Mustang echoed through the quiet back roads of Ridgeville, a sound more pain than power. Smoke hissed from beneath the dented hood like a dying dragon breathing its last. The car finally rolled to a shaky stop, in front of Hank's Auto Repair, a humble, sun-faded garage tucked between a shuttered diner and a forgotten hardware store. The sign above the door hung crooked, as if time had given up trying to straighten it. From the driver's seat emerged Martin Holloway, tall, silver-haired, wrapped in an expensive wool coat that didn't belong anywhere near engine grease. A man who had more cars in his collection than most people had shoes, and a reputation that preceded him like a thunderclap. He eyed the garage with visible doubt, then looked over the old mechanic hunched under the hood of a rusted pickup inside. Hank emerged slowly, wiping his hands on a rag already soaked in blackened oil. Mid-50s, flannel shirt, sun-worn skin, and a calm demeanor that suggested he'd seen it all and wasn't particularly impressed anymore. Holloway gestured toward the steaming car with a mix of frustration and pride. '67 Mustang Fastback, one of only a handful left with the original VIN and Shelby GT trim. He paused, letting that hang in the air like a challenge. It died halfway to LA. I've taken it to 5 shops. No one could fix it. Said the frame's cracked, the transmission's done, and the engine block's warped. They all said the same thing, junkyard. He crossed his arms, his tone laced with disdain. But someone said you were good with hopeless cases. Hank stepped closer, his eyes scanning the car's broken lines like a surgeon reviewing an X-ray. He said nothing for a long while, just listened to the faint clicks of cooling metal, the occasional hiss of leaking pressure. Finally, he looked at Holloway. 3 days, Holloway said, clearly not expecting a yes. The Petersen Showcase, if it's not running by then, I cut my losses. Hank's brow furrowed. 3 days? 3 days. Most would have laughed. Some would have thrown up their hands. But Hank simply nodded once, like a man agreeing to something personal. Leave her here, he said. Holloway scoffed. You're serious? She's still got a heart, Hank replied. Just need someone who knows how to listen. With a skeptical shake of his head, Holloway turned and walked back to his town car, not even bothering to look back. The Mustang sat there, hissing in silence, broken but defiant, like it was waiting to be believed in. And Hank, the humble mechanic, walked toward it slowly, placing a hand on the fender as if greeting an old friend who'd seen better days. Let's see what they missed, girl. The garage door creaked shut behind the Mustang with a clang that echoed through the cold cement walls. Outside, dusk settled into darkness, but inside Hank's workshop, time seemed to bend. The overhead bulbs buzzed faintly, casting long shadows, across a landscape of scattered tools, half-rebuilt carburetors, and coffee-stained manuals stacked like sacred texts. Hank stood before the battered car, arms folded, just staring. Not inspecting, not calculating, listening. He could hear it, the story the Mustang was trying to tell. Years of neglect, botched restorations, a frame twisted just enough to ruin alignment, gaskets dry as paper, pistons scored to hell. Someone had even tried to modernize her, dropped in cheap electronics that had fried half the original wiring. This ain't a fix, Hank muttered to himself. This is a resurrection. Most mechanics would have hauled the whole thing onto a trailer and sold the parts for scrap, but Hank rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Night 1 bled into day 2. He stripped the engine block bare, laying out pieces on a giant tarp like bones in an autopsy. He replaced cracked seals using hand-cut rubber strips, each one tailored, with an X-Acto knife. The frame? Bent in 2 spots. He heated it slowly with a welding torch, hammering the steel back into shape with a sledge as sparks flew around him like fireflies in a storm. By midnight, he was grinding down rusted bolts, with nothing but a headlamp and an old blues record playing on a dusty turntable in the corner. Muddy Waters crooned while Hank coaxed out bolts that hadn't moved since Nixon was president. Still, the problems kept mounting. The fuel system was junk. Hank yanked out the whole thing and replaced it with parts salvaged from a lawnmower, engine, and an old Dodge pickup. He didn't have money for new components, didn't need them. Hank didn't build cars with catalogs. He built them with his gut. Neighbors wandered by throughout the day, watching through the open garage door like spectators at a train wreck. "Poor bastards chasing ghosts," said Pete, a retired trucker who sat on the curb eating sunflower seeds. Sarah from the diner brought Hank a plate of ribs and cornbread and watched him working in silence. "You okay, Hank?" He nodded, barely glancing up. "You're not sleeping, are you?" He shrugged. "Neither is she." By the second night, the Mustang began to breathe. The engine block was back in place, wires braided together with hand-labeled tags, fuel line humming with pressure. Hank slid into the driver's seat, torn leather, cracked dash, but still somehow noble. He twisted the key. Nothing. He took a deep breath, adjusted the timing by hand, and tried again. Ch-ch-ch-ch. Vroom! The eye. Roar filled the garage like thunder. Tools rattled on shelves. Light bulbs flickered. Hank grinned for the first time in days. She wasn't dead. She was angry, sure, but alive. He killed the engine, stepped out, and placed a hand on the warm hood. "Knew you had it in you," he whispered. And though the town still doubted, the Mustang had spoken, and Hank had heard her loud and clear. 3 days. 2 left. Plenty of time. The sun rose over Los Angeles like a spotlight on a grand stage. Outside the Petersen Automotive Museum, the red carpet stretched beneath the feet of collectors, journalists, and restoration fanatics from around the world. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, $1 million machines gleamed like works of art. Bugattis, Ferraris, vintage Astons, and Rolls-Royces, each buffed to surgical perfection. And then, rumbling up the avenue like it had no intention of asking for permission, came her. The '67 Mustang Fastback. It didn't roll in with a roar, it prowled in with presence. A deep, confident purr rumbled beneath its hood, tuned not to impress, but to intimidate. The paint wasn't fresh from the factory, flawless. It was deep graphite, brushed by hand, its finish almost alive in the morning sun. Every curve, every line, reclaimed, reformed, resurrected. Behind the wheel, Hank looked uncomfortable in his one clean shirt. He drove with steady hands, eyes fixed ahead, while the crowd slowly realized what they were witnessing. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs turned into gasps. "That can't be the Holloway Mustang," one collector muttered, stepping forward with a dropped jaw. "Impossible," said another. "That wreck was dead. It was dead." But it was very much alive, and it growled gently as Hank brought it to a perfect stop on the main display platform. The showcase attendant, visibly flustered, double-checked the registry. Is this entry 4U74? She asked. "Should be," Hank replied. The murmuring intensified when Martin Holloway himself stepped out of a nearby Rolls-Royce, flanked by 2 assistants and looking as though he'd just walked into a hallucination. He stopped cold, eyes wide, lips parted. The Mustang sat there like a myth brought to life, like it had clawed its way back through time and dared anyone to doubt it again. Holloway approached slowly, running his hand along the newly fabricated quarter panel, then down to the chrome door handle, shined to a quiet brilliance, like a secret only Hank had been trusted to protect. "How?" he whispered. "She just needed someone to listen," Hank said, stepping out of the driver's seat. An official from the judging panel approached, looking dazed. "Mr. Holloway, your vehicle's been entered under the Restoration Challenge category. Judges are speechless." One of them was already on his knees, examining the welds on the undercarriage. Another was marveling at the engine bay, where every wire was color-coded and tagged by hand, each component clearly restored from salvage, not a single modern plug-in to be found. "This isn't just a restoration," he said in awe. "This is an act of devotion." The murmurs grew into applause, then cheers. Cameras turned toward Hank, whose expression hadn't changed much since pulling the first bolt 3 days earlier. He scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't come for a trophy," he muttered. "Then maybe," Holloway said slowly, "you came for the truth." He turned to the crowd, eyes blazing. "Let it be known, I handed this car over 3 days ago, convinced it was a corpse. Every expert said the same. This man," he gestured to Hank, "did what they said was impossible." Reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward. Hank looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "What's your secret, Mr. Hank?" one of them asked. He looked at the Mustang. She was never broken, just forgotten. As the sun dipped below the LA skyline, golden light bathed the Petersen Museum's rooftop pavilion in a warm glow. The showcase had reached its crescendo. Champagne glasses clinked, jazz music played softly in the background, and proud owners stood beside their gleaming machines as the final award announcements began. Hank stayed near the edge of the crowd, leaning against a railing, sipping black coffee from a styrofoam cup. He wasn't dressed for the occasion. His slacks were creased wrong, his collar sat lopsided, but nobody seemed to notice anymore. People passed him with nods, quiet reverence, even awe. He didn't know how to receive it. He wasn't used to being seen. On the central stage, a suited MC tapped the microphone. "And now the final award of the evening," he announced. "The judge's grand honor, given not for polish or pedigree, but for passion, grit, and the spirit of restoration." The Mustang's name was called. The applause was thunderous. Someone tried to pull Hank toward the stage. He shook his head gently. "That car earned it, not me." Then the crowd parted, and Martin Holloway walked toward him, slow, deliberate, holding a small envelope in one hand, the silver trophy in the other. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "About her, too." Hank offered a modest shrug. "I just gave her the time no one else would." "No," Holloway said, stepping closer. "You gave her back her soul." He held out the envelope. "This is the title. She's yours." Hank blinked. "Come again?" "I signed it over this morning. Didn't tell anyone. Wasn't sure you'd finish. But after what I saw today?" He smiled, sincerely for once. "She belongs to the man who saved her." The crowd went dead silent. The cameras turned. A whisper swept through the rooftop, like wind in the trees. Hank looked down at the envelope in his grease-stained fingers. His eyes betrayed something unspoken: loss, hope, disbelief. He looked back at the Mustang, then at Holloway. "I can't accept this," he said. "That's a collector's gem. You could sell it for fortunes," Holloway finished, "but it wouldn't mean anything. Not like it does now." Hank hesitated, eyes glossing slightly. "For 30 years, I've been fixing things no one cared about," he said, voice low. "Kept telling myself it mattered, that it made a difference." He paused. This proves it did." He took the envelope. The applause came slowly at first, then swelled. An ovation not for a man in a suit or a millionaire with a rare toy, but for a quiet mechanic who reminded everyone why machines mattered. Later that night, when the crowd dispersed and the rooftop emptied, Hank sat behind the Mustang's wheel again. No cameras, no stage lights, just him and her. He ran a hand over the dashboard. "Guess we're going home together, huh?" He turned the key. The engine fired up instantly, steady, strong, and soulful. And as he rolled away into the glowing city night, people turned to look. Not at the car, but at the man driving it. The man who didn't just fix what was broken. He believed in it.